All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This webinar today is going to help you understand how to hire excellent talent in Latin America for 75% less, really tapping into an entire different, location to hire for your company. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Nick Kimball. I've been recruiting for about 12 years. All the way back from starting in the US military, getting out, figuring out, hey, what would I love to do? Got into talent acquisition at Copart. And through my career, I've been able to work with some amazing companies, both startups, large organizations, done tons of freelance. And so years back, we actually got together, myself and Andrew, the co-founder here at Crucial Recruiting, and we thought about different ways to do hiring. So currently, the traditional standard model out there is about 25% fees of base. Base pay is what I mean. So say you have a $100,000 software engineer you're hiring, that's a $20K fee. And what we thought is we could do a little bit differently. And so we started fractional recruitment, basically a one-time fee model that allows you to have an entire recruiting team at your disposal, opposed to paying those big fees and having more of a transactional approach. We really wanted to partner with startups, offer them a great cost solution that's going to get all of the hiring done that they need. With that said, let's go ahead and dive in. So introduction really quickly, this is going to be to save up to 75% by hiring in Latin America. Now, this is not just comp, right? When we're looking at that 75%, it's a huge number, but it's really an all-inclusive number. It includes the actual recruiting, utilizing us or another way of recruiting. I would definitely recommend us. Ads as well, time to fill, and turnover. These are huge pieces of the puzzle that can stop your progress moving forward when you're building that next-gen product. So let's dive in. So why Latin America now? So Latin America right now is a really interesting place to find great talent. It's got a great growing tech ecosystem, compared to, more of the typical or the last typical hiring offshore. The difference is you're going to have a time zone overlap with these folks in Latin America, making those morning, evening meetings, stand-up calls much easier. In addition to that, you're going to be expanding talent pipelines, bringing diversity into your team, and that's always a positive. So it's just a great market to find talent, whether that's engineers, whether that's sales, customer service. But let's get into it a little bit further. So where are the cost savings coming from? There's a few different areas they're coming from. Number one, obviously, salary deltas, right? The difference between the US and Latin America, the cost of living, everything is quite a bit different as far as compensation. When you're looking at, filling a software engineer, say, San Francisco, that's going to be quite high in comparison to most of the rest of the country, but even more so when you're looking in Latin America. Number two is going to be recruiting costs. How do I actually go about finding these folks? What does it look like for fees? What does it look like for tools to find this talent? That's going to be a huge difference in cost from the United States. You have a very competitive market up there in the United States, and then you have an emerging market down here in Latin America. The third one is going to be speed, time to fill. It's quite interesting in Latin America. There is an emerging market there. There's tons of candidates. They're looking for great roles, and they have great skills. And then the fourth piece of it is going to be turnover. So this is a huge cost in the US. Whether that turnover cost is, typically around $4,700 for the average, but it can be $6,000 to upwards to $28,000, that turnover replacement cost. It just depends if it's going to be, more entry level or upwards towards your executive. But one of the key things to think about with turnover costs is that when you look at the labor market in the United States, that turnover is much quicker. You're seeing tech talent typically 2.5, 3 years moving on to different companies, different roles. Whereas in Latin America, you see them stay a little bit longer, typically around 4 to 5 years. So it's quite an interesting piece on the turnover side. In addition to that, just getting a little bit further into that salary snapshot. So the average within the United States right now is sitting around 120K base for software engineers. When you look at Mexico specifically, and just targeting out Mexico, there's differences across all Latin America, but it's typically a 55% base comp savings. So it's a huge savings there if you're looking for great talent. And the one thing I want to stress is you're not compromising quality. You're getting quality engineers in Mexico at that savings where their cost of living is comparable. Again, if you're living in San Francisco, the cost of living is way higher, so is the compensation. But if your company has the ability to hire remote or hybrid, can kind of build out a workforce down in Latin America, it's a huge cost savings. Again, we'll kind of touch again on sales as well. So sales, customer service, again, you're seeing that huge savings there. Again, that also comes down to cost of living. So these statistics really speak for themselves. I think one really important note when you are hiring talent in Latin America is making sure that you have a provider. Now, you're going to see the cost savings here on base, but you need to make sure you're also compliant. And there's multiple ways to do this. One is going the EOR route, which is an employer of record. And you can use companies like Deal, Oyster, you could utilize Rippling. There's a lot of resources there. But if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. I'd be happy to connect you with someone who can walk you through that a little bit further. Let's go beyond salary. So salary is a big piece, as we all know, right? When we're budgeting, we're looking at Q1, how much we can afford for our talent for the next year. But the other piece of it is also benefits. Benefits typically accumulate up to about 30% of the comp in the United States. LATAM packages are typically often lower. You can plug and play, you can choose different options. And so I would always recommend getting great benefits, making sure that's covered. A lot of what you're going to do there is working with an EOR, or if you're setting up an entity in Mexico, you'll be able to do that. The other piece, again, is just reducing cost per hire. So as you have that turnover and you need talent quickly, you can shift to Latin America to find great talent and bring people in quicker. And that eventually will reduce that cost per hire. You're also looking at recruitment costs. So if you're utilizing something like Crucial, we can come in and really reduce that cost by utilizing a fractional model. And what I mean by that fractional model is a one-time fee, basically, or not one-time fee, but monthly fee that you're going to be paying for recruitment each month. With that said, let's talk a little bit more about the talent supply in Latin America. It's very fascinating. And so it's grown in leaps and bounds. So right now, we're seeing about 130,000 tech graduates per year from STEM-related programs in Latin America. And then even within that space, specifically in tech, over 47% speak an advanced level of English or higher. So you're not dealing with as many communication issues. If that is the case, they are able to communicate with the US, work really closely with that team. Some of the skills that we're seeing out of these universities are AI, cybersecurity, DevOps, cloud computing, data science, but we're also seeing multiple others. I've found some great UX designers, some great front-end engineers as well. With that said, roles that work great in Latin America, I'm going to say most all, there are skill sets across the board, but number one, as I look at it, engineering, you need a front-end engineer, back-end engineer, data scientist, AI engineer. That's going to be a great place. If you're looking for sales, you're going to be able to find those SDRs, BDRs, as well as the CSMs. Customer support and ops, this is a great option. There's a lot of different resources to find great folks in Latin America for this area. And then the fourth one's going to be design, finance, and RevOps. That is going to take a little bit more of a deep dive into that, just because you want to make sure that you're finding someone that has your aesthetic right in design, and that takes a recruiter. You're also going to need to make sure with finance and RevOps that they understand how to support US-based businesses. But there is great talent, and there's talent that does know your type of business there. So it is great to find these type of folks in Latin America. How do we try to build a company in Latin America? So my recommendation is always, start remote first. It is obviously a preference of mine, but it also allows you a lot of flexibility. Pilot first, bring in a few team members, have them work remote. If you see this working well, if you see the value add, expand into perhaps co-working hubs, bring a team together, try to have those built out in specific cities if you want these people to work closely together. Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara are great hubs for this. With that said, let's talk a little bit about what we can do for you. So as I said, we kind of piloted fractional recruiting. What this is a custom savings model for startups, right? We want startups to be able to hire when they need it and not have to have the comp associated with someone when they don't need it. So say you're hiring 6 to 10 engineers over the next 12 months, and maybe you're only hiring those first 6 months. Utilize us as a fractional model, pay us monthly, and we will take care of all of that. We will source, hire, and provide a report ROI for you. We want to make sure you're getting value and really understand what you're getting from us while also saving at the same time and not sacrificing quality. With that said, thank you very much. Any questions? All right, then. Well, have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.